Greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking, and I am Dale Barcy. As always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. So, here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey. And today, I am extremely pleased, I'm very excited to welcome back for a second conversation Mignon Thomas out of Texas, USA. Mignon is a coach. She's a mental health advocate. She's a mental wellness inspired coach. She's an entrepreneur. She's founder of Simply the Best Life Coach Academy, and she's an author. And her book is Pleasantly Uncomfortable. Welcome back, Mignon, for another conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. So much. We had fun the first time, and
Mhm.
I've watched your platform grow, and it's been really inspiring. And lately, you just been talking on the topics that I had to get a piece of. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this. So, today we're supposed to be tackling this topic of advocacy today, because I'll tell everybody a little bit of background about that. Is that I made a post and Miriam jumped right on it and says we've got to talk about this and break it down. It's like, okay, let's do this. So, Ms. Coach, when we say advocacy, though, what exactly are we talking about? What's advocacy?
When I speak of advocacy, I'm thinking about speaking up for what's right. Rather, it is something that is going to benefit the patient or the nurse, because at the end of the day, we're there to provide good quality care. But advocacy it should come second nature, but speaking up for what's right.
I think we have to assimilate and internalize that this is in every sense our role. Whether we're performing a task, whether we are part of handing over a report, whether we are speaking with family, with other members of the healthcare team, whether we're speaking up for ourselves and our colleagues, this in essence is our role.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. You're a coach, right? And one of your things is that I see you're huge on advocacy. So what are the biggest stumbling blocks you see to people wanting to or being able to speak up and doing it appropriately?
Unfortunately, the biggest thing that I'm seeing is lack of clarity.
Mm,
And that's scary, but them not knowing that they're not doing it correctly or that it needs to be spoken up about. It's amazing to me. And the fact that when I bring that into boardrooms, into like nurses stations, meeting behind doors, and they're like, well, what are you gonna do for us? I'm like, provide clarity about what's actually going on here.
yes.
Because
Mm.
no one seems to know. And what we've been doing thus far is not working. But everybody knows that, and everybody want to talk about that. But let's get to the root of what's really going on. And it seems to me that for the most part, nobody knows, even with the complaints that are voiced. When we want to get down to actually providing a solution or creating one,
Yeah.
nobody really knows like how all that got started, what can we do about it, and it just gets to a point to where you get tired of hearing that.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
We have to do something.
Yeah.
We've been put in
Yeah.
these positions and have the knowledge and the skill set. We're called to action to do something. That's just not in people like us to just sit idle. So we have to speak up, like you
Yeah.
said, say something. But that's
You,
been the challenge of people not realizing how serious and devastating it is that they don't realize that something's wrong.
yes. Yes. That's a big thing. They don't realize that something is wrong. Uh, and how how do we move from that sort of inertia
Mm-hmm.
to getting them to see what's wrong and then to take action about what's wrong? Because advocacy is really it's more than speaking, it's
Yes.
action. It's got to be followed by action. You can talk all you want, and it's like prayer without works.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so, advocacy is action. And what I have observed, and you just said that you do per diem like maybe once a week. I no
Mhm.
longer do it. But what I used to observe, and what I still observe through conversations with people, is that people are not feeling comfortable about speaking. The areas in which they are not don't are not conducive to
Mhm.
speaking up and taking action about what needs to be done. How do we give people this strength? Because it's one thing to say people need to speak up, but
Yeah.
we haven't provided them with the strength to do so. How do we give people this strength to speak up?
One thing is, I work with a lot of nurses individually as well as in corporate. So that's what kind of makes me different. When I'm working with them individually, what I usually help them to do, because everybody has a concern, and most of us, no matter where you work, we have a concern when it comes to the job.
Mm-hmm.
So I have them to go back and revisit their why. Like, why are you there? Why do you want to be there? Why are you there? And revisit that, and then just like really weigh it out. Is it really worth it to you? So with the way things are right now, can you go in there and give 100%? Can
Mm-hmm.
you do that? Can you go home at night and sleep comfortably knowing that you gave 100%? Because most of the people that are drawn to work with me, that's what they believe, that's what they get up and want to do. That's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's going to take a person with integrity to do that. But getting back to know your why. If you come to, and knowing that it's okay, if when you sit down and do those process of evaluations and you're like, it's just really not worth it to me. Because people can say there's not going to be any kickbacks, there's not going to be any difficult conversations, there's not going to be any you being isolated, the toxic environment that people are complaining of. Most of them don't even know what that really is. If you think you've been in it, the moment that you speak up about something that is right, you're going to realize what it really is at that point. That's just the way that it works. And I just always encourage people to go back and see, is it really worth it to do that for you in this space? Because that's what it's going to take. And I'm like, and people are like, well, I got to pay my bills. Well, I did too. And to me, like, this is sacred work. It was, whether you are religious or not, it means something to me. And it's an opportunity, a blessing to be able to even perform this work, And when you
Mm-hmm.
change your mindset like that, and instead of it just being a job, then you can do a little bit more than what's just in black and white and you're expected to do,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what the other people are doing. But the thing that got me was that I was the person that did that. I was the person that got isolated. I was the person that ended up in EAP because of the fact that I stood up for multiple things. One was for the nurses that I work with when I seen they had a common concern that had been going on for years and could be fixed. And why? Because if those nurses are not feeling appreciated or feel like that you're doing a disservice to them, how can they show up in 100% and go to bat for your patients? Because
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
in the best environment, nothing is perfect. And so nurses are going to be required to go over and beyond. And
Yeah.
then, too, because we don't know everything. And some things, with all of the new things that were coming, we're just in that time of season where we're learning about
Mm-hmm.
all these new diseases and things are changing, things are going away that were available and not available anymore. This is just the way that healthcare works.
Mm-hmm.
But if on the foundation they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel like you have their back, and they're not passionate about what they do, it's going to be hard for them to stand up. So to make that make sense, I do understand when people arrive at that point about it's just really not worth it. And I'm like, okay. And then we talk about what that looks like. Can you operate in a satisfactory measure in this space and provide good quality care without harming yourself or anyone else. But I kind of
Mhm.
play a little devil's advocacy role when I do go to these facilities because they don't recognize the power that they have as far as nurses. And so I'm like, you're mad at administration, but they're only doing it because you're not saying anything.
You're not saying anything. And so that's a question now that I want to ask because I suspect that many people who don't speak up know that they should.
Mm-hmm.
And on some level want to, but are either too by then too intimidated or have other considerations that they're looking at and say, well, I need to pay my bills, I need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So how do people, what kind of advice do you give people then to help them develop these actionable skills, little actions to develop this skill of? Because we're not going to start if you've never spoken up, you're not going to walk into a boardroom and start speaking there. We're not
Mm-mm.
starting speaker. So
Right.
how do we develop these skills in small actionable ways that we get to the point where we actually feel um vindicated. I don't want to say comfortable because very often we're still not comfortable, but at
Mm-hmm.
least to the point where we say we're going to speak up and we're going to speak up in a manner that gets our point across.
First thing you can do is start speaking up in your personal life. Start reevaluating how you're living and what you're doing.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
speaking up for what's right there because what we don't need is more hypocrites. So that's a great way to practice it because those are the people that are going to be able to push back the most and actually hurt you.
Yes.
No? So, and that's one of my strengths when I go in and address something because at the end of the day, I really don't care what those people think about me.
Yeah.
They're not I care, yeah, but not to the point where I'm going to be bawling and can't go on.
Yeah.
So a reality check per se when it comes to the workplace, but starting small with little things that maybe have been bothering you, addressing them and
Yes.
understanding that it's going to be uncomfortable because it's new. And a lot of that is, anxiety. We are anticipating an unwanted response. It's probably not even going to happen,
Yeah.
but we can start there.
So here is the other thing that happens, Mignon, is that traditionally, or at least what I have observed traditionally in healthcare as I've worked in different areas, is that uh, we did not advocate, we were not encouraged to taught to encourage advocate for ourselves and for patients in real ways. And then the system was that we promoted people into leadership positions without giving them any kind of leadership, real leadership training, which includes advocacy. So we have people here who are not skilled at advocating for themselves and whatever. And then we move them into a position where they really need to advocate for themselves, for their staff, for their patients, for
Mm-hmm.
whatever, without giving them the skills to do so.
Yes.
How are we going to address this nonsense? Because you know what? The nurse here who we're talking to, who is now thinking, okay, well, I really need to develop my advocacy skills, take some actionable steps. How does this person approach this leader who is in this position and maybe even a little resentful that here is this nurse doing what they wanted to do when they were here, but now don't have the skill?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to do this?
Well, I will tell you, I can talk on it now. I've been away from them long enough. It was very intimidating to approach the
Yes.
administration at
Yes.
the VA. Very intimidating. And that's the battle that I fought and won. And it led to me having some very uncomfortable days. But like you said, I didn't get there overnight. One day I was raised by a supervisor. My mom was a supervisor. So, she treated me like her staff and always reminded me of what's expected. And
Mhm.
so I kind of yeah, I looked at her and she was a very good supervisor. She considered everything. Even when she was wrong, she would go back and address it and, apologize and find a way to make it right. And if we couldn't necessarily make it right, to get to a medium of where we
Mm-hmm.
were like, okay, we're okay with that. Um, so I pull from that heavily. And one of the things that I love about the way the VA is set up, though, and not so much everywhere else, is that we don't work for each other.
Mm-hmm.
We are all, when you're employed by them, everybody's equal. It don't matter what your
Mm-hmm.
job title is, whether that's your boss or not. We're all equal. And I like that. And I was like, if we could, there's not many things that I do like about the administration, but I did like that because it removed that in a little bit of that intimidation
Mm-hmm.
factor. But what it also required me to do, which is to consider the conversation and pull from what's the book called? Crucial Conversations, when it was something that I wanted to address. Think of it in the three ways. They say, there's what you say happened, what the other person says happened, and then what really happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Consider all sides. So that's going to have me to solicit some advice from people that I know are not going to be biased, that I trust, that are not going to leak it before I have a chance to address it. Because we got to watch that too.
Yes.
Leak it and add their other sauce on top of it. And then I would do that. Maybe talk to my husband about it, someone outside of that environment. Like, we have these conversations. Am I crazy? Or, and then just evaluate, is this really worth it? And be okay with whatever the reply back or answer would be. Email was the one that usually worked the best for me
Mm-hmm.
because I can be very sarcastic when I talk. I've worked on that. I don't sugarcoat anything. And with my personality type and the way that I talk and that I'm difficult to understand, I'm making my point not to because I don't want to be misunderstood. But I've got it to us. I've worked on it. I've got it to a science to where I'm not offending people when I'm talking to them and addressing things. But email was one way to address it, even if it's the sense of scheduling a time to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm approaching it and asking for that time, and with the respect of respecting their schedule, saying it's upper leadership. That's the first thing
Mm-hmm.
you want to do is, not just barge in their office and they're not going to listen to you. And yeah,
Right.
not going to be good. So, even the ones that say they have an open door policy. So, but when someone does that for me, that shows me, okay, this is important to them and they're being respectful of my time. I'm going to allot them this time to talk to it about it. Because, I mean, now I'm an employer too. But
Yeah.
it does that little thing right there, just introducing. And then maybe sometimes I know things get lost, everything falls apart when something important is on the table, but you can give them a while, they can confirm a date, time goes by, because people will be like, they forgot about me. That remember, remember,
Yep.
no, they're not necessarily, for the most
Mm-hmm.
part.
Yeah.
Don't assume the worst. Maybe you just got pushed down, yes, but not disregarded. Bring it
Yeah.
back up. Since you sent the email already, yeah, you can knock on the door and be like, hey, or catch them in the hallway, whatever. But that's usually the method that I would use, and it worked for me. And especially when you're dealing with leadership, because we look at emails a lot.
Yeah.
We like go through them as a checklist, da, 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 you know. And then two, it's in black and white, so it's documented in the case that it goes wrong, the total opposite way. Not that you don't get what you want, but that it
Mhm.
goes wrong. So you do
Yeah.
have it documented that you did address it and follow the chain of command. And then that puts a lot of accountability on the individual that has the concern too. Do you know the chain of command of where you work? Most people do
Yeah.
not.
I know. I know. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's important, y'all.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are upset, but I'm like, but did you say something? Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
said something, such and such. Well, she's not even the one that
Is
makes
that
that
the
decision.
person you should have?
Above all, remembering that even if we do have higher ups and that person has the ability to fire you. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. We are all equal.
Yeah. And we mentioned leadership, but I think that also when very often when we speak of advocacy, we're speaking of people who are in a subordinate position. But I think we have to remember that people who are not in a subordinate position also
Mm-hmm.
um, have to be advocates and also very often feel um, intimidated.
Yes.
And they
Yes.
intimidated. I will tell you that of a lesson that I learned. I tell you of a lesson, an incident that happened, and I actually never forgot it. I was at one point a DON,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't even exactly remember what occurred, but I asked the nurse to come to my office, right? And she came with her she came. So when you said open door, I used to congratulate myself that I had an open door policy. So yes, my door was open, but she came with her purse and she said, "So what did I do now?" She
Mm-hmm.
was ready to go home because she thought that was what, and it kind of held a mirror up to me because clearly it seemed to me then that I had been conveying this, and that if I ask you to come see me, I am not pleased. As it was, that was not the case this time. I really just wanted some information.
Yes.
But it had a mirror up to my face, and I'm saying to myself, I'm doing something wrong here. Because
Mm-hmm.
she should not feel that because I asked her to come, um, she had to come with her purse.
Yes.
You
She
wanted
was prepared for
information.
the worst.
It forced me, though. It forced me to probably approach staff differently. And so my approach then was that very afternoon, I had someone make me a nice sign that I put on my door that says, Acts of kindness starts here, right? And so my thought was, whether I was going to reprimand somebody or congratulate somebody or whatever it was in between, I needed to start with an act of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it changed a lot of the way people start, everyone in the building knew I like tea. People started stopping by for tea and whatever. But it gave people an opportunity to feel like we could talk,
Yes.
right? It
Yes.
didn't mean that everything was going to go your way or everything was going to go my way, but we
Mm-hmm.
could talk.
Yes.
And that in itself is advocacy.
Yes. I'm glad that you mentioned that because I don't think I would have made it as long as at the places that I did work. I wouldn't have made it that long if I didn't work for administration that had open door and really meant it and went out of their way like you did. They
Mhm.
recognized that. Like for my last boss, God rest her soul, she would keep drinks in like her office in her private refrigerator, but you wouldn't
Yeah.
know that unless you actually took advantage of the open door. And she always invited us. But like you said, there was a lot of things that she required us to do that were within our job description, but I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. And I was like, why
Mhm.
can't somebody else do it? Well, because she recognized that was in my strengths and because she said so. So I was
Mhm.
just volunteered to do it, and it it did reassure me. I verbalized that I don't want to do that. Can somebody else do it next time? And she'd be like, no, you know. But that's also job security. Like that's my talent. She recognized that and she's utilizing it in a way. It wasn't a sense of something that was just making me just like devastated and bringing me down. She was really good at paying attention to like if we were having a bad day, she would notice it. Even in spite of her being busy, because I don't think people realize what y'all are doing behind those doors, like your DON, your administrators. They are
Yeah.
doing a lot, and their work never ends. But
It,
she would section off a time, and at the end of the day, like around 3 o'clock, we knew we could come by. And we would take advantage of that. Some of us sometimes just go in and congregate because we were done with our work for the most part and get ready for the next day. So we would stop
yeah.
by, talk,
Mhm.
and like
Mhm.
grab us a drink. And she was she knew what we liked and she would keep that in there. And I was really bad about that. And even on the time during the times when like maybe we're getting ready for JCO or something like that, or corporate is coming down, most are not so much available then. But I would
Yeah.
catch the door open and she had a sign just like you, and it would flip and let us know when it's okay and when it's
Mm.
not. And so I would catch them walking out like her bosses and then scoot in there and get my little thing, hey, and then she even had like a candy jar, the candy jar that had the good candy, and grab it and go on by my business. But when stuff got rough, um, I knew it was somebody there that I could really go and address it with, and she did go to bat for us. And
Yeah.
what that did for me as a nurse too, for whatever reason, there was a split there between the RNs and the LVNs, and so I was one that was accepted in both lanes. I don't know what the tiff is about, but it allowed me or positioned me to be able to reinforce some of the things that she said and give some of them the rationale of why we need to do this. And like, well, she doesn't care. We like, yes, she do. Like, for example, they wanted us to have cell phones on us, and she was like, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. Um,
Exactly.
and I seen the cell phones in her office, so I knew, we were having those conversations. And so when staff would start talking about that, no, she don't care. But like, no, she really does. She really does go to bat for us, And her boss will take what she allows or be like, okay, I'm cool with from her, and then go to her boss. Everybody answers to somebody all the way to the
Yeah.
top. But
Yeah.
that lady in particular, she really did care. And it was little, like you said, acts of kindness that showed me. I don't know if everybody else didn't just, I don't know what their deal was, but it showed me that even in difficult times, I knew she cared and she wasn't just doing it because even when she wrote me up,
Yeah.
it was no bad blood there.
Yeah.
She was like, and it was just point blank. She had to write me up because that's what the policy says. I was frustrated and mad at them, not at her.
Yeah.
I was like, this needs to be revisited because I'm being punished for something that's not my fault. But like that. But if that line of communication wasn't open, I could have told myself all kind of stories.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
she didn't
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
me, and I still see that today, in spite of the gumbo that we're in of problems. We
Yeah.
still have those minor problems. So this is something that we actually can do something about.
Yes. 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 And the other thing is that we also have to realize, sorry, that when we choose to speak up or when we speak up, um sometimes we're seeing the little picture, right? And
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, the person with may be looking at the big picture. The point is that if we're only seeing the little picture, then it's probably not going to work out the way we think it should. But we should be able to, both of us, get to
Mm-hmm.
the point where, yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're telling me. However, this is good for one person, but I need it to be work for 10 or
Yes.
whatever it
Yes.
is, you know. And so we should be able to understand that just because something did not go our way, first of all, that should not stop us from speaking up.
Mm-hmm.
But also we should be able to look for what was who does it, if it doesn't benefit what I had in mind, does it benefit a bigger picture? Or is it just somebody sweeping it under the rug? In which
Yes.
case, our approach to either of those things is going to be a little different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, that
Yeah.
is so true, so true. And one of the rules that I operate behind in everything that I do when it comes to me providing care for someone else, is I'll be like, and I rubbed people the wrong way with that, and I just really didn't care because I remember about I am a strong advocate for my patients and clients,
Hmm.
whoever I'm serving. And I'm like, I understand. And when it gets to a certain level, the answer is going to be no. sometimes, and the answer is just no, because that's the way it was written. That's what it is. But I need to know why I'm telling this
Right.
person no, so that I can educate them, and
Yes.
those that are open to it even provide some suggestions on how they can get done what they're trying to do.
Yes.
Because in hindsight, everything that is written in black and white that is a no to is a no, because that's what has worked so far, not because people are trying to be evil. And so now we have this new thing that's popping up, and it's like, okay, well, we got to find a solution to this, so we can work past it. That's how we come up with new things, new solutions. It's okay until somebody bumps into it and it doesn't work.
And it
But
doesn't
that has
work
always
anymore.
been my biggest thing, because with a young nurse, I would go to the charge nurse and I'd be like, such and such wants this, or they want more pain medicine. That was the thing when I came out of school. They want more pain medicine. And go back and be like, well, she said you can't have any more. After I already told them, so now I got to go to the charge. He said, no, you can't have any more. The doctor wrote it like this, so no, you have a couple more hours left. They're like, why? Whatever. And then they will be mad. But then when I start saying, well, because it's written like this, because this is the way this drug works.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way the doctor is going to know that it's not working, it's not holding you, and that you're not drug seeking is if we abide by the way that they wrote it. Now, if it's not holding you, then when a doctor comes in and addresses your pain scale, or how is Mrs. Smith doing, then we can say, no, it's not holding her. It's wearing her off for probably about 2 hours before her next dose. Or I'm giving it to her an hour later and she talking about she wants some more. Both of those, it gives the doctor the information they need to maybe go work it a little bit further and figure out what's going on. Then they will back off, both of them. And the drug seekers and the ones that really were in pain, they will both back off, because they're like, okay, she really knows what she's doing and she's not just telling me no. And I can keep asking her, but I'm not going to get it. you know, uh, things like that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great point you just brought up, because also that's advocacy, demonstrating knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
demonstrating that you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, which gives people uh comfort in the fact that you're taking care of them.
Yes.
Advocated. You just
Yes.
advocated. You made them comfortable. This has been a great conversation. There's so many challenges though, really, that to overcome uh, in terms of advocating, of being an advocate, because we say we should do it, and we know
Mm-hmm.
intellectually that we should do it. But I think we have to recognize that it isn't always easy to do, because there's very little in our education that actually really truly deep down prepares us for advocacy. And I think it goes all the way back to what you started by saying in the beginning, is that we have not learned really fully to advocate for us
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And until we do that, we really can't advocate for anyone else. Not
Right.
properly.
What made this so important to me was me advocating for my father when he was going through the things he was
Mm,
going through. He got early onset dementia. And when people would see him, see his skin color, see his background, see his chart, they want to just write off and put, a description on there and be like, common thing, UTI. We know, well, if we take most of the elderly population to the ER right now, they're going to be diagnosed with that. That's
yeah.
just common knowledge, and not want to look any further. So I remember getting off from work and going in, and not aggressively like I see a lot of people doing, but with respect, but firm, and wanting to know what has happened this day. What are we being prescribed? What does the labs look like? How has he really been doing?
Mm-hmm.
What is the plan? What are we working on here? And that's going to
Mm-hmm.
serve in two ways, because a lot of people don't even know what the plan is. There's always a plan, and you need
There's
to
always
know
a
it.
plan. Mm-hmm.
So when I found out the plan was, my dad had a stroke and woke up and he was just like out of it. I'm like, y'all, this is not how stroke victims wake up. Y'all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But they just want to move him on and get him off of the floor. When I found out what the plan was, they let me know they're not taking this altered mental state seriously. And I'm like, no, this is not him, y'all. I'm like, if I wasn't there to advocate for him, then that would have been my mom. But she don't have the knowledge that I have. And then
Right.
That's her husband. So, you're in a
Mm-hmm.
space. But me advocating for him, and I'll go to bat for anybody, even people that I don't know, to the point to where we had to go several rounds with an insurance company that said in so many words that he didn't have a stroke when the clinical, and they said he did not have a stroke, and they replied back and told me that he had the clinical version of the stroke. And so I came back and said, that's what that means. We kept going back and forth, and I was like, I just don't understand. But I could have just gave up, but I didn't, because I was like, no, you're not going to do this to him. And it just, at that time, I started reaching out to people that I knew that I seen was having issues, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I'll help you if you're okay with that. Just let me know, even if you just want to bounce stuff off of me. But we have to advocate in almost every space. It's
Yes.
exhausting, but it must be done.
Yes, right, right. And that's the other thing. It is exhausting. It has become exhausting. And so I understand why people like just throw up their hands and say, you know what, I can't. I can't because
Mm-hmm.
it has become exhausting.
Yeah. And that tips to another thing. Like, people are like, well, you left. You no longer work full time. Well, long time ago, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Mm.
And when my doctor told me that my job was stressing me out to the point where it was affecting my health, after we done worked together for at least a year, then I'm listening to her, because we done fixed everything else. And she was like, no, that environment, you have to get out of that. And she was right. And I was really passionate about what I did. I worked hard to get to where I was at. That was like my end goal position that I wanted to be in. And but my life is worth way more than that. And so I sat back and I had to evaluate some things, because I wasn't happy with that at all. And I was like, okay, I can no longer come here and give my 100%.
Mhm.
So I can no longer be here.
Mhm. That's right.
That's who I am. No, because I'm not going to come and not give my patients 100%. I'm not going to come and give 60% and put the other 40% on my coworkers.
Mhm.
That's just not how I operate. So I recognized that it was time for me to move on. At that point in time, I just needed a break from nursing healthcare environment altogether to get me together.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I had enough sense to do that. And if my doctor wouldn't have suggested it, I probably would have never did it. But so today, I try to help people to notice those signs before they get to the point where I was at.
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's why I left, and why I'm really big about advocating for yourself as well as your patients, so that people, you don't have to end up like me. My career ended earlier than what I would have liked it to, because I'm okay with that, because I'm at peace with that. At that point in time, that was the best thing for me to do, and my life has been blessed since then, in my family, because that was,
Mhm.
I'm not really happy about the way I'm able to show up in my family. That's my number one. But it still did not have to go the way that it did.
Right. Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, now we know better, let's do better.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you mentioned something very, very important, recognizing the signs early,
Mm-hmm.
because very often we don't.
Yeah. It's like, if you're pulling up to the parking lot, and if you're like me, if you're pulling up to the parking lot, and we joke about it candidly, and you're calling out after you drove all the way there because you just cannot get enough strength in yourself to go in the building, it's not the person that's calling up there, going up there, I don't feel like going to work today. Not that person.
Mm-mm.
No,
Mm-mm.
that meme is not for you. Don't read into the hype. I know what you're going through. If you're pulling up there, you done drove all the way there because you're pushing yourself. You got, I got to do this. I got to take care of my family. I'm thankful for my position and my blessing. And this is what I want to do. But something is telling you that something is not right if you are doing that. Please listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot go in the building. I cannot
Yeah,
go in the building.
it's like, because once you step in that building, I know
Mhm.
many days I have said, well, I'll just go and I'll leave early. That never happened.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't
No.
happen. Yeah, it doesn't happen. Mignon, thank you so very much for this conversation. I mean, I know we could go on forever with this
Yes.
advocacy thing, but
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for
It's
having me.
been
It's
great.
always a pleasure, and I'll continue to watch and support.
Thank you. At some point, we're going to do a round three, I guess.
I know. Let's see. Hopefully, people will listen, will continue to get out there and share and do the work that we do and make a
Yeah.
difference. Hopefully, we can come back and talk about what has changed.
What has changed so much? Yes, so much.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, Mignon.
You too. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.